Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Well, here we are again. And I'm actually pretty excited. I mean, I guess there's never a time I'm not excited to be on the podcast, but I have been looking forward to getting back at it. Kyle, what's going on with you?
I think we were both a little bit, sort of worn out at the end of last episode or last season, but it's been, I agree. I'm looking forward to getting back into it, and I'm excited to be here today.
Oh, I think it's been a good thing and healthy to take a little bit of time off every few months. But it's hard at the same time because I know for me personally, what I'm realizing is that doing a weekly podcast with you and having people listen and, give comments and email and whatever, it keeps me in check.
Yeah.
In a sense that it helps me stay productive. I'm having to do something every week and I'm held accountable to my conversations every week,
Totally.
And then when you take 2 months off, it's like, man, I'm pretty lazy the last couple months.
We all need to be a little lazy sometimes too, but I think, what you just said, Sean, really speaks to the power of accountability and how we count on each other to be accountable. And I think that's one of the powers of our friendship is that we hold each other's feet to the fire and be like, all right, let's do it. Let's get this done. Let's set a date and get it done before then.
I think it also speaks to the power of just going public, right? Even if nobody were to tune in and listen to us, we don't know that.
Yeah.
We know that it's on iTunes and that it's out there for the world to hear. So if you don't follow through or you don't stay on track, then, somebody's going to be like, wait, last week you said, or last year or whatever. So there's definitely that.
Yep.
It helps bring, kind of put it in the spotlight. That whole, a lot of people and growth gurus have said it. You've got to go public with their goals. Otherwise, it's easier to talk yourself out of doing it, right? And nobody loses and nobody knows you're a loser. Or whatever.
Oh, it's awesome.
Nobody will ever know I missed the mark if I never identify the mark, right?
Yeah.
I think what's also not been helpful is the quarantine. We continue to face COVID-19 and the coronavirus and all these different stipulations from city and county and state government in terms of who can operate, who can't, what to do, where to go, how to act when you're in public, and so forth. So I think that too probably has played into my recent track record of being a little more or a little less productive than normal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, because you start something or you start thinking a certain way and then you hear something that differs from that and you're like, all right, I got to rethink this or I got to re-engineer this part of my life because I need to be following this or that or whatever. And I think it's hard to move forward with so many stops and starts like that.
Well, not only that, but, we talked about it toward the end of season 3. It's been kind of nice, right? You don't have to go to meetings and dinner dates and whatever else you have on your social calendar. And one of the things I enjoyed was not, feeling the pressure of going to the gym every day after work and spending 2 or 3 hours there. But then not having those obligations or options even, you of course feel that time with being at home. And for me, it's not been as easy to pick up a book or be productive. It's been, oh, what shows have I missed
Yeah.
out on
Should
Netflix?
maybe I
Because
should look through Instagram for like 2 hours straight.
yeah, what hot new games are on or in the Apple
Yeah,
Store
exactly.
from my
Yeah.
phone?
I think that's maybe what we're feeling also is like we spent that time doing that stuff and now we're back together like, being like, all right, every week, let's do it.
Yep. Yeah, if we're not careful, and I think this is true for a lot of us or many people, if we're not careful to balance the need for rest and kind of detaching for a little bit with also thinking about the future and what we want to do and accomplish and all the different work we want to put our hands to, if we're not careful, the entire year of 2020 will pass and we'll be looking at another year of not moving closer towards our goals. And that's something I actually just wrote about last week on my
Hmm.
column with Bio News or Physics Ataxia News. Granted, there is a need for rest, but there's a fine
Yep.
line between detaching and enjoying a season of rest and just straight up being lazy, right? And I feel like lately I've been straight up lazy, so it's time to get back to the regular season of
Yeah, yeah.
production in my life.
Sean, I appreciate that admission, and we will get back on track together for sure.
So, with that, Kyle, I know that you've been um, thinking about something that's really kind of the driving topic of our
Yeah.
season opener today. So, and to be fair to our listeners, when Kyle and I get on the episode together, sometimes we might do a little bit of research and work things out together. But this is one that we didn't talk
Nope.
about. Kyle threw out a
Uh,
concept, and I said, okay,
let's
let's
try
talk
it.
about it.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what's going to come out. I don't even know if we're going to agree. So just to be fair, I want our listeners to know that we don't always
Yep.
hash everything out before. Sometimes it really gives just in the moment sort of top of mind thinking. So, Kyle, what is that concept or idea that you've been wrestling with
Yeah,
lately?
well, at a high level, it's just the concept of self talk. I think we all know that it's really important. Like we all have a conversation in our head almost all the time, right? And that
Mm.
can be an important thing in how we treat ourselves and how we see ourselves. And I was listening to a book called Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, and she
Mm.
was talking about this concept of like, and she gave an example like, all right, say you're going to meet your friend for coffee and you just lose track of time and you look down, you're watching like, oh, I am 15 minutes late. My friend is going to hate me. I am such a jerk. I am such a bad friend. Well,
Mm.
now all of a sudden it turns into not like, oh shoot, I'm late, let's fix that. It's, oh shoot, I am a terrible person. Like, just from the way
Mm.
we think about that. And I know I do that all the time in lots of different situations.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of focusing on the thing that happened, we turn it into a thing that can define like who we are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, my initial thought process right now is there. I haven't read the book. I'm a fan of Brene Brown, but I haven't read this book. Is there a level of accountability accountability though, because a
Mm.
part of me thinks, okay, if I'm late once or twice, sure, I'm not. It doesn't make me a terrible friend. But what about those folks that are repeatedly late?
That's a good call. Like,
At some point, do they become not good friends because they
yeah.
don't value my time? Like, like you said, you're late now and then, and we've been late for each other. I've never thought, oh my gosh, Kyle's a terrible friend. But if you were late every Sunday to a phone call recording or when we were able to hang out, at some point I'm gonna think you're a terrible
Yep.
friend. So at what point is it negative self-talk and actually taking responsibility for your absent-mindedness or whatever it
No,
might be?
I think that's a good point. And something that wasn't talked about as much in this book. And something like everything in life, right? It's a balance between,
Hmm.
all right, we should take that to heart, like, and make sure it teaches us we shouldn't be late next time. However,
Hmm.
maybe it shouldn't like define how we think of ourselves, because just because we're late once doesn't mean we're a terrible friend, like you were saying. So maybe it is more of a balance than a black or white kind of thing.
I wonder if I wonder how she would argue or talk about the separation of some shortcomings like being late or mistakes, whatever you call them, whatever you want. Is that separate from the way I identify? Like, if I'm late, am I just late all the? Let's say I'm late all the time. Am I just a person that's late all the time, and I need to face that reality? Or am I a terrible person? So I wonder
Mm,
if those are two
yeah.
different schools of thought. Like, just because I'm late all the time doesn't make me a terrible person. Or, think about it in any other context. Like, if I'm a short tempered person. I know this to be true. I think I get that from my father, right? There's not a lot of patience in a lot of different scenarios. Does that make me a terrible person?
No.
Or does that just mean I have a short temper?
Yeah. No, I think that's good distinction, because at that point now we can look at each situation and be like, all right, like I know Sean's not a terrible person, but he did something that he would probably also agree in this situation that wasn't the most productive reaction to it, right? So
Sure.
then you
Yeah.
can look objectively at each situation rather than like having it define who you are. You can correct your mistakes, or your
Mm.
where you think you fell short.
Yeah.
So I
Interesting.
was also thinking about it a couple other ways too. I think that I don't know how, if this is not productive or whatever, but like when we give people compliments, a lot of times the compliment is, you are so awesome. You are an awesome person. And it's because they did something great, right? That you appreciate.
Mhm.
Or like, you're the best. Oh, you are the best. And like, all right, what exactly does that mean? That probably means they did something nice for you, right? And so
Mhm.
then you use that to define them. You are awesome. You are the best. Um, and so does that play into this thought of identifying with things rather than like seeing them as stuff that just happened? And all right, if you can identify what was awesome, maybe that person could do it again in the future, or improve on it, or
So I feel like maybe what you're saying is, and again, I haven't read the book, but I wonder if the argument is, be careful not to
right.
generalize an identity because of one or two things, good or bad.
Totally.
So, like I said, maybe being specific in that praise. Are they, just because I brought donuts to work one day, does that make me an
Yeah,
awesome person?
exactly.
Or is it just really cool that I brought donuts one day?
Exactly. Yeah. So I have one other way to think about this concept that I think it's related. Like, how many times have you heard somebody talk about their interaction with, like, oh, I met a celebrity and oh my gosh, he was such a jerk or she was such a jerk. And it's like, okay, that was one interaction and you are defining
Sure.
that person now. And whatever, maybe it was a situation that, I don't know, maybe they're having a bad day, whatever it was, but you're defining them by one interaction. And I just think that that's a good demonstration of this idea that we think about.
Yeah, that's true. And I think maybe that just helps remind me you never know what people are up against, right? Maybe that interaction with the celebrity left a sour taste in your mouth or whatever phrase you want to use. But what if that day their dog died, or that morning they found out that a friend is struggling with a diagnosis, or their spouse said, I want out. Who knows what they were up against, and in that moment, all because they weren't what you'd hope they'd be, like, oh, cool, a fan, let's take a selfie. Like, does that really make them rude?
Exactly.
Or mean that they didn't want to take a picture with you? That's
Yeah. So
that's a good reminder.
I think we get into this place where we use that defining thinking in a lot of different situations, and maybe a lot of times it's not super entirely productive. I also think, and we kind of don't really talk politics all that much on this podcast, but
but we're about to.
but no, I think that we all have the urge or the tendency to, like, define ourselves, like identity politics, right? Like, I think that it's bigger. This idea it relates to a lot of different situations that maybe we shouldn't identify ourselves by every little thing that happens, and we should, see a lot of things a little more objectively.
No, I think, and the reason why I say we're about to is because there's actually a thought in my head that's been going through my mind since you brought this subject up. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. Not because we're not political folks, but that's not what the point of the podcast is, but obviously we're impacted by everything around us, right? Politics included. So I do want to say very clearly that there are many things that I deeply disagree with when it comes to our current president, Donald Trump. However, there are some things where I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like it. I think it's probably true of everybody, right? Some things you're like, yes, I agree. Some things you're like, no, that's the dumbest thing ever. Okay, so I can't say, I won't say who I'm going to vote for, yes or no. Like, I'm not trying to make a defining point here. But right now, in fact, just this morning, there are tweets floating around, a picture of the president golfing. And a lot of people are hating on the guy for hitting the golf course on a Sunday in July because the coronavirus is obviously a thing. And I get it. However, I mean, how many of us work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day? None of us. So it bothers me that the guy's taking a bunch of flack because he hit the golf course this morning. Now, of course, granted, sometimes that wouldn't be acceptable, right? Like I think back to George Bush, George W., and when he got notice of the Twin Towers being hit, right? He was sitting in a classroom with kids, I believe, and somebody passed him a note or somebody whispered in his ear, and he called the meeting short, but he didn't immediately respond and say, "Oh crap, we need to go." I think he let the person finish talking. Then it was like, "Hey, I need to go. Sorry, but we'll talk more later," or whatever. I don't remember exactly, but in that moment, there's a balance of priority, and I don't like that somebody's saying you can't go golfing because there's an ongoing issue down the road. Like, it's an ongoing issue. It's not an immediate thing that he or anybody else can fix. And I think one of the questions that I saw that I'm like, yeah, okay, give the guy some slack. If he weren't golfing, would that reduce some deaths? Or would it move us closer to a vaccine? I don't know.
So, Sean, I'm going to use this thought right now and be like, hey, are you saying you're a Trump supporter? Like, that's where,
like I said,
that's where this concept
some things
goes.
I like, most things I don't.
Yeah, no, that's where this concept goes, though. Like, you just said one thing, and now I'm gonna label you, and like, you know what I mean? So,
sure,
I just think it's a dangerous road to go down that road.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Bring it way back down, right? Bring it home. Like you said, you have one interaction with Hugh Jackman at a coffee shop or whatever, and now you think he's the most amazing and most humble, or you think he's the biggest jerk on the planet.
My gosh.
Really, it depends on that 60-second interaction. And like you said, you've just identified and defined this guy's entire life based on one moment. And I think I love the distinction and this challenge to maybe rethink and offer a little bit of grace to yourself and to those around you and the interactions, because it's really unfair to identify yourself or anybody else or define yourself or anybody else because of one interaction, one mistake, one bad decision, or one thing you did or are doing.
Yeah, and also, don't judge the book Dare to Lead just based on this conversation, because it really was a good book, and my interpretation of it, is not the final word. So,
Sure. Well, I mean, that's the point of life, right? You read something, you watch something, you hear something, then you wrestle with it, how that might impact your philosophy on life. In fact, one of my favorite shows has been How to Get Away with Murder. Mm-hmm. And that's produced on ABC. It just ended, it ended like in May, but I watch it via Netflix. So for me, it just ended last night, right? I binge watched 3 or 4 episodes, and now the show is over. It's not the end of the season, it's the end of the series. And I've watched it from the beginning. An incredible show. Well, and just in a couple of the last episodes last night, there were certain phrases and words used in the script that actually had me thinking about my life. And it put things in perspective. And how many times has a movie done that, or a song that gets you to think about where you've come from, or how you've been hurt, or how maybe you've hurt others. And there's just so much power in seeing and hearing and reading a different perspective that should help us reevaluate everything, not necessarily just pinpoint one identity because of one incident.
Yeah, and everything we're ingesting into our brains and all the opinions and that we're noticing and also forming, they're all within the context of everything else we know. Nothing stands alone, right? And so that, I think that helps me understand too, that like everything affects everything else. Like, just because you see one thing in one certain way doesn't mean this or that. Like, let's consider it in the context of everything else, you know?
Yeah.
So,
There's obviously, I feel like we're dealing with a
yeah.
big part of life, right? And we're not gonna make life better in 26 minutes.
Man, it was a step forward though. I did
Yeah,
enjoy
for
that.
sure.
Yeah, different perspectives. So
Of course, we'd love to hear yours too, and especially if you've read the book, maybe you can help Kyle make that book look good, or whatever it may be. If you've been around, you know that one thing we started doing in season 3 was expressing some gratitude, some very specific gratitude and effort that Kyle and I have kind of labeled as our thank you note. So we're going to continue doing that as a way to kind of not reshape, but refocus our mind and have this mentality of gratitude. So we're going to share that, and then we got a new thing we're going to start doing for season 4. But before we look into that, Kyle, have you given thought to somebody or something you want to say thank you
yeah.
to?
So I want to express my gratitude for the FA community. Friedrich's Ataxia, it's a community that both of us find ourselves in. But we just finished a fundraising campaign, the Ride Ataxia Chicago Summer Challenge, and it was so successful. Not only did we raise a whole bunch of money, but it was just a lot of fun, and everyone really stepped up. You know, we weren't able to ride our bikes together, so it was way different, right? It was a month-long campaign, and everyone was so engaged, posting really positive and fun things to social media and just getting really involved. And so I wanted to say thank you to the FA community for that effort.
Yeah, I was certainly impressed with seeing the results of the fundraising alone. Not only the activity online, you could tell, even though we're all separate, there's so much unity
Yeah.
in the way the way that whole challenge was approached, and that's coming from somebody on the outside, right?
Yeah.
I'm part of the community, but I didn't write. Like, I didn't post. I didn't
Yeah.
give money. I didn't really do anything as a part of that particular challenge, but I can certainly see the results or the impact of the effort.
Awesome. Awesome. So,
My thank you note is actually, I'm gonna give it to or I'm saying thank you to a local Starbucks.
all
And I
right.
think it goes kind of ties into what we talked about, right? It's easy to have one bad interaction, and so you hate that restaurant or you hate that business, and you'll never go back. And how life changing one interaction can be. Well, I had one of those interactions the other day, but it was incredibly positive. And why it stuck out to me was that it's the same stuff I talk about every day at work. In my day job, we talk so much about the importance of guest satisfaction and ensuring people are happy with the experience each individual offers. It's not just, recognition for the brand itself. It's everybody playing a part to make sure that brand looks good and people enjoy the experience well. This particular Starbucks did that for me yesterday, and it was the easiest stuff. It was just simply remembering my drink and making a suggestion and remembering my name. All of those things just made me feel good. They didn't roll out the red carpet, they didn't give me anything for free, but they remembered my name,
Yeah.
and that made me feel good. So I want to say thank you to the efforts of those particular partners and baristas making it a point to go out of their way to have friendly conversations
Right,
with me
right.
and remember who I am and what I like to drink. Just those little things there make a world of difference for so many people.
Yeah, it's the fundamentals, right? Just do the
Exactly.
regular stuff, and it's really great.
Yeah, if you just treat everybody like a human being, right? Like a friend, and every service interaction is better, whether you're a dry cleaner, a gas station, or a restaurant, or whatever it may
Yep,
be.
yep.
So, with that, our new thing is actually something we're going to start out by calling our one thing. It might morph into a different name, who knows? But Kyle and I both believe that it's important to identify your goals and dreams, right? We all have them, but we also know that nothing good happens by accident, right? You don't automatically just wake up one day and lose 20 pounds. You don't wake up one day and have a six-pack ab. You don't wake up one day and have a finished book, right? These little steps every day or every week to get you closer and closer to your objective is what's going to help you get the results you want. So, what we decided to begin doing is identifying just one thing, one very specific action we can each take this particular week to move us closer and closer to our objectives, whether it's a goal for a few months down the road or a few years down the road. There has to be something measurable today to move us in that direction. So, we're going to begin sharing one thing we can each do this week to move us in the right direction. So, with that said, Kyle, what is a one thing you're going to do this week to move you closer and closer to your desired results?
So, in my thank you note, I said that the Ready Taxi Chicago Summer Challenge just came to an end a little while ago last week. And we are looking forward to the Ready Taxia Global Challenge starting September 25th. And we really want to engage as much of the FA community around the globe as possible. And so it's going to take a lot of communication and just emails and phone calls and stuff like that. And so I'm looking forward to continuing that and, making those. It's not always easy to set up a phone call and across 3 different time zones and all this stuff, right? So I'm looking forward to just continually chipping away at that and creating a communication across the globe for the FA community.
Okay, I like all that. Sounds like really cool, but it also is 30,000 feet in the air. What's the one thing you're going to do to make all of that a reality?
All right. Tomorrow, I am going to send an email to Dr. Hélène Puccio in France and set up a meeting with her to talk about their engagement in the process. She's a researcher in France, and I want to get her lab involved.
Nice. All right, cool. I love it. It's identifying first that big picture, and then what little steps can we take to get closer and closer. So, very cool. Thank you. We started the episode with talking about how lazy I've been, right? And one thing that I've seen incredible results with is for my broken femur is riding my trike.
Yeah.
Well, the last couple weeks I haven't ridden as much. So I'm going to commit to riding 25 miles during the work week.
Nice.
25 miles, I think, for you and I is easy on a day off, right? We can bust it out in a couple hours. But when you're talking about working, for me, I don't work from home. When you're talking about working 8 hours in your commute time before and after, I'm away from home 9-10 hours a day. And then squeezing in an 8 to 10 mile ride at the end of a workday, that can be a little challenging. But I think it's doable. So I'm going to commit to riding 25 miles this week during my work week, not just
Right.
a 1 day off kind of ride, but
Beautiful. I
several
like
rides
it.
throughout the week.
Well, I'm going to be watching you on Strava and keeping you accountable, man.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. Find me on Strava. In fact, you can find Kyle. You can join the Ride of the Taxi group. So if you're not using Strava yet, you should, especially if you're a runner or a cyclist or those are the two big ones. Maybe a swimmer.
Yeah, they do swimming, and you can log all kinds of stuff on there, but those are the main three.
Cool. Well, again, thank you and welcome back to Season 4. Welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Kyle and I look forward to joining you again next week, checking in on our one thing, and then, of course, coming up with another. So we're going to have to think about what we're going to do next week to move closer and closer to our goals. So, Kyle, thanks for the wonderful, conversation and for sharing about Renee's book.
Yep. Thank you, Sean. Until next time, keep living with urgency. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Special thanks to our friend and audio producer, Jake Tompkins.